going to cost us about $80,000. And the point to be made here is that's $80,000 historically. To the best of my knowledge, which means from this point out, whenever we blow the whistle, the firefighter's going to have to come in and we're going to have to pay them. To the best of my knowledge right now, that the existing budget does not include funding for that this year. Maybe Steve could probably type better.
Mr. Daly. Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, Dave's a lot taller than I am. The $80,000 number that Mr. Dodge has on the screen for you is probably the extent of the town's potential cost in this particular matter. Any other issues or any other potential outcomes are purely speculative at this point. All of this falls into the realm of collective bargaining and a lawsuit, litigation in general. It's really not an appropriate topic other than to discuss what the possible outside liability for the town is financially.
Mr. McCary.
I'd just like to point out something that Dave didn't mention, and that is that if the town votes the FinCom recommendations, if the town then votes beyond the FinCom recommendations as recommended by the school committee and the Board of Selectmen with respect to these two salary items that Dave talked about, we will have a negative balance in the stabilization fund without a transfer, which means we will not have a balanced budget, which means that we will be either voting a Proposition 2.5 override for general government or in a special election, or coming back at a future town meeting to realign the budget.
Mr. Piero. Please state your name and address, Mr. Piero.
$250,000, we can save it. The town borrow money times and times again. They can borrow from the Hillview and pay the interest and save it for the future. That's my job. I don't know about everybody else. Someone here said they're going to spend $2 the budget. Well, how would you balance the budget if you don't have $250,000? How would you balance it?
Mr. Pasquale. You still seek recognition, Mr. Pasquale?
John Pasquale, 12 Hickory Lane. Mr. Daly, you didn't answer Mr. Dodge's question. His question was, is the $80,000 underneath the fire department budget? And you didn't answer his question, so I'd like to hear the answer.
Mr. Daly? No. Mrs. Cerrone.
Excuse me. Because it's a potential liability for the town. It's not a cost that we have agreed to pay or are forced to pay at this point in time.
Mrs. Cerrone.
I think that Mr. Fitzgerald brought the point up that $200,000 was seed money, and if it had remained in the stabilization fund, it would have accrued the $50,000 worth of interest. And I think Mr. Fitzgerald said it's time to reinvest in our community, and I couldn't agree with you more. However, I think my interpretation of investment is just a little bit different than Mr. Fitzgerald, but I may be incorrect in that. I see an investment in the community as having a police force that doesn't work for nothing, a fire force who's there to respond. They don't work for nothing, an ambulance to respond to those who are in need. They're necessary in the town, and I eat those words, but I'm saying them. You have the educational system that is educating your children. They are our future. You have your parks, you have your recreational. There's so much that right now we have an FY93 plan in place. This is only FY92. We have the skeletal framework of a 94 in place. Where are the finances coming from? Trust me, your guess is as good as ours, because we never know what the state legislature is doing. From year to year, the funding is dramatically different, and with all those factors, when you look at it, you need to plan now for your future. And putting this money into the stabilization fund is not going to, it doesn't matter if it's, water surplus money or general fund money or Hillview money. It is the town's money. And if you don't put it somewhere, and I favor the stabilization because it does take a 2/3 vote of town meeting. And then that way, a simple majority by one vote can't move the money, and I think that's responsible.
Mr. Billows, we've already heard from you. Just briefly.
Just two quick comments. The finance committee member, Mr. Mosseri, said that there are two things that can happen if we don't vote this, and that is we are faced with a proposition override. What was the second thing, if I can ask?
Mr. Mosseri.
I said that we have to balance the budget, and depending, town meeting, we have two issues here. One is funding the town budget, and the other is determining what the town budget is. So town meeting will have to make a decision, okay, to bring in a balanced budget by recommending something less than what the Finance Committee is recommending right now, I'm sorry, not what the Finance Committee is recommending, what the boards of selectmen and school committee are presenting in their budgets, or transfer additional funds from stabilization to balance the budget. And the only way we can get additional funds from stabilization beyond what we have already, I can put the figures back up again.
I think now I can recall. The first thing was a proposition 2.5 override, or that we would come back, and I suggested for another town meeting, and I suggested as a third alternative, and that is that we closely scrutinize, as Mr. Venezia has said, the budget.
Yes.
Maybe cut out some of the fat. That alternative was not presented by the FinCom. The second thing is I had asked the question, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Dodge had said we need a plan. We needed to know where we're going. What's not being done? No one's answered that question. If direction is given to this town meeting as to where we are going, then we will probably be able to act on this very intelligently. Well, we don't have that question. Except to say, we're going to have trouble next year. FinCom has already told us that. If we don't start biting the bullet now, we're going to have trouble next year.
Mr. Reitmeyer.
Move the question.
The motion is to terminate debate. On the motion to terminate debate, all those in favor of so terminating debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. All right, the motion before us, the proponents of the motion have another 2 minutes. I take it that they're willing to forego those 2 minutes. On the motion, under Article 9, to transfer the sum of $250,000 to the stabilization fund from the earnings of the Hillview Country Club, said amount being reimbursement of funds advanced to the Hillview Commission under Article 4 of the special town meeting on January 19th, 1988. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. The motion is carried. Article 10, Mr. Billows. A hand vote has been requested. 7 voters standing at their seats can request a hand vote. The chair, seeing 7 voters standing at their seats requesting a hand vote on the previous motion. On the previous motion, all those in favor, please raise your right hands. And will my tellers please all go and count? And please don't forget the town clerk, Ms. Fitzgerald. Ms. Budell. 23. Mr. Reitmeyer.
28.
28. 51. All those opposed, please raise your right hand. Mr. Reitmeyer.
12.
12. Ms. Bodell, 27. Ms. Fitzgerald, 19. 18. The vote is 102 in favor and 57 opposed. The motion is carried. Article 10. I have been advised that Mr. Sandorfi has a motion which covers all of Article 10, and rather than starting to proceed with the line items for the purpose of proper order, the chair will recognize Mr. Sandorfi first to make his procedural motion. Mr. Sandorfi.
Mr. Moderator, I move that all number of cost items printed in Article 10 be treated as budget line items, and that they be assigned line item number as deemed appropriate by the Finance Committee.
He wants to.
The motion is basically to divide, if you would look, for instance, at line item 11, there are 3 items that go into the present line item 11. And the intent of the motion would be to make those all separate line items. Is that correct, Mr. Sandorfi?
That's correct, Mr. Moderator.
On the motion to divide Article 10 more, to slice it more thinly than it is now sliced, does the Finance Committee have a recommendation, Mr. Mochary?
The Finance Committee is opposed to this. The Finance Committee was given a charge at the last April town meeting to go and modify and improve the warrant to make it more visible, to provide more data in the warrant so that the citizens of the town could make better decisions in their voting. And we've done that, and we've done it with risk and in great debate over whether or not putting this information in would lead to George's this exact request. Okay? Our feeling was that we do not want to so subdivide the budgets that there is zero flexibility in terms of our town administrator to go and run his departments and run them effectively and efficiently. But we also wanted to provide you with the information about what are the elements that make up these specific line item budget numbers. So the Finance Committee's position is to leave the warrant alone from that point of view. However, it is in front of you, and if you wish to go forward and vote in favor of the motion, I think the Finance Committee would obviously go along with the town meeting's request in this regard.
Any further discussion? Mr. Sandorfi.
I agree with Mr. Mosseri when he says that the Finance Committee has presented more detail and more information so the voters can make more intelligent decisions than it has been accustomed. Well, in the near past, although if you go back far enough, you will remember that a great deal of detail, even more than what we see now, was presented in the town warrant. One of the first principles of financial management is to identify cost items and to control them. The Finance Committee has done the identification of the cost items for us. However, major budgets, such as the police department, fire department, large chunks of money, are presented to the town meeting as a single appropriation. And yes, indeed, as the Finance Committee said, that presents a great deal of flexibility to the administration of those budgets, because now they have a single number that limits. within that single number, allocation can be made any which way. In other words, if you are going to appropriate, let's take another